We have Ellen, who's calling in from Alabama. Ellen, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for taking my call. So yesterday, my good friends revealed to my husband and I that they no longer believe in the moon landing. And these are smart people. They're both doctors. They're raising a family. It's just, it blows my mind. They said they have good reason and they're going to send it to me, but they haven't yet.
Of course. I'm sure it's like a TikTok video. I'm 80% sure it's a TikTok video, Ellen. I think your moon landing, we talked about this at the beginning. Flat Earth stuff has gotten more popular. Moon landing denial, out of all the conspiracy theories out there that have like grown in popularity, that may be a top 5, if not number 1. For sure, right? Like, I feel like there's so many more people now that are like, no, actually, this thing didn't happen, right?
Yeah. You could probably pick like a person out of a crowd of like a room full of like 50 people. Probably one of them is going to doubt it at least.
Yeah. In America, I'd say, that's totally true. Yeah. I don't know. Like, that's really unfortunate to hear. So this was just this. Go ahead.
That was my next question to them was, do you believe the earth is flat? Because it just follows, like whatever your algorithm has gotten you into this loop of wild belief.
Yeah, give it a minute.
So like, I got to ask, were you just like talking about the moon landing? Like, how does a conversation topic like that come up casually?
I don't even remember.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. Yeah. I grew up in Texas.
My mind. And what do you say?
Oh, go ahead.
What do you say? What do you say to them to make them, I don't know, like just bring them back down a little or question them? I don't even know what to ask.
I think people make the mistake, in my opinion, right? When you encounter a belief like that, that's pretty radical, where they want to change that particular belief right away. Okay. And the problem is you can't really do that with most people at most times, right? Especially the more deeply held that belief is, the harder it's going to be to change people's mind. Now, if you're in a particular work context and you're working on something technical, for example, you're going to be way more open to other people's input because you're both looking and working in these kinds of things. But the thing about beliefs are a lot of people don't think through a lot of their beliefs, right? They don't think about how they get from point A to point B to point C. And so if you're not active in thinking about that, it's going to be harder to change that point of view if you don't even know how you got there in the first place. So I kind of think about it like, and I've used this example a lot, this analogy, as like therapy. If you're going to therapy because you struggle with cognitive issues, right? Maybe your sense of self-worth or, whatever, usually you don't go to therapy and it's like, oh, I don't struggle with these thoughts anymore, or I don't think in this particular pattern that's unhelpful to me anymore, right? Usually it takes a little while. So like, I would encourage you, if anything, Ellen, to maybe keep being that friend to that person that can talk to them about that belief, because the more that they can explore that with somebody who doesn't think the same way, the more likely they are to actually change it, rather than just say, oh, this person is crazy, I don't want to talk to them anymore about it, and then just leave it alone. Because that's when you get into those echo chambers. That's when people isolate themselves, and then they meet other people that believe in the wild thing too, and then it's just a cycle that keeps going on and on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, we would never stop talking to this couple. We love them and hang out with them all the time, but it's so wild because kind of he described it as he watched a video and must have showed it to his wife, and she chimes in like, oh yeah, it's convincing.
Oh man, yeah, that's really unfortunate to hear. What I was going to say earlier, and then I want Eli to chime in too, is that I grew up in Texas, and so I had the opportunity to go to Houston, and they have you can go to the Space Center. I even did the a space camp, like staying overnight at the Space Center and stuff, right? I talked to people who worked on various projects at NASA. They actually have people who will go out there and like explain like, yeah, here's what I did, like volunteers that used to work at different projects and stuff. So like, I don't know, I from a very young age got to like see how everything was done and the actual facilities they use and stuff. So it's especially wild to me for people to just be like, yeah, none of this stuff actually happened. It was all just a movie set by Steven Spielberg or whatever, like just, crazy stuff. But of course, that's the world that we're living in now. I guess people are much more open to it not being the case. But yeah, Eli, go ahead.
I think what happens a lot of the time is like some people will hear about some details of the moon landing that they didn't realize were true before. Like, for example, there was a portion of the, like, when it aired, when it was on TV, the actual landing, there was no camera on the moon to capture the shuttle descending or the moon lander descending. So there was something shot in a studio that was played, but while they landed, until they got out and set up the exterior cameras, and then they started transmitting images from the moon. And someone takes an interview of like Neil Armstrong mentioning something about that on Conan without explaining, and they're like, he admitted it, but then he goes on to, like, throughout the rest of the interview, talk about actually landing on and being on the moon and what that was like, and they just ignore that part. So there's this little bit of, like, you can call it like confirmation bias, you can call it it's some sort of logical fallacy, like, necessarily, but what I've noticed is most people end up like, okay, well, if this fishy thing is true, maybe I can't trust NASA. And I think it's fitting that your follow-up question was like, do you think the Earth is flat? Because that's where it starts. Well, NASA can't be trusted, and NASA says that the Earth is flat, or NASA says the moon landing is real. And it becomes one of those, like, well, whatever they say must be wrong. So if it doesn't matter who they are, if they're saying it, it's wrong. So whatever is the opposite of that must be the truth. And that's how we land here.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, and it's so weird because we're all atheists. They don't believe in gods. We don't believe in gods. I just always thought we were sort of on the same level as far as skepticism, and I guess not.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're in the sciences as well. So it's just wild.
That's another interesting thing. The more I've been in this space, the more I've realized that atheists are not as smart as they think they are a lot of times. I'm sorry, it's true. They're not as skeptical. They really aren't as thoroughly thought through on some of this stuff. I mean, I think what part of it is you just become we live in a society that really values domain experts, right? Our economy is based on people who the more expert they are in their domain, the more money they usually get on something, right? And so, like, people are driven towards that. And the more you learn about a particular thing, the more confident you probably are in yourself and how you interact with things. And you apply that confidence to other things that you maybe don't know much about. And suddenly you have all kinds of grifters and people who are actively promoting BS that they don't even realize isn't even true, because they just think that they're the smartest thing in the world. And I've definitely talked to other atheists that believe in all kinds of things that I definitely don't think is true, but it happens. It's out there. So, well, Ellen, that's a sad thing to hear, but I encourage you, as you mentioned, maybe if you keep having those conversations, you can call back and say, hey, I kind of changed their mind, or if they changed their mind on this. I would like to hear an update on that in the future. But for now, I will go ahead and let you go. Thanks so much for calling in and giving us something to talk about here. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and enjoy life. Be more positive than I've been so far on this show. But yeah, Eli, what did you think of that call?
Pessimistic show. It reminded me, I think the way those things come up surprises you, because I don't remember I was at work like last year talking to somebody about something, like about the planets, about Mars, I think. I don't remember specifically. And then another guy goes, you guys still believe in planets? And like, he wasn't kidding. And then finally later on, like, okay, like he does think the Earth is flat. I'm like, okay. And we talked about it a few times, and eventually I'm just like, I can't have this conversation anymore. Like it frustrates me a little bit when I try to like explain things. Like, one of the big things is like gravity is not real. But my point is basically just that the way those things come up will surprise you sometimes. So because Ellen said she didn't remember like how it came up, and that's I can see why that was the case, because it's just so random and it catches you off guard.